Now let's bring in Republican presidential candidate Carly Fiorina. She joins us from Iowa. Good morning, Mrs. Fiorina. I want to start off with Paul Ryan. He was a congressional staffer elected to the House at age 28. Is he too much of a Washington insider to change so-called business as usual in Washington?
Well, we'll see. But I think everything you heard Paul Ryan say is that he intends to lead the Republican caucus to providing solutions. And I think that's what people want. You know, when I'm out here on the campaign trail, people want to see results. Leadership is about producing results. It's not about talking. It's about producing results. And so one of the things that I would encourage Congress to do is pass the zero-based budgeting bill that has been languishing in Congress for too long, pass the REINS Act, which gives Congress the authority, the accountability to oversee every new regulation that has an impact of greater than $100 million, and pass a border security bill so that we can finally secure our border. Those are things that would be producing results. The American people would see it, and I think it would advance the ball tremendously.
Let's talk about the CNBC debates. Are you sending someone to the meetings here in Washington this evening, and do you think there should be changes?
Well, actually, I don't have campaign staff going to that meeting. I have campaign staff here in Iowa with me, and logistically we just couldn't work it through. The RNC obviously made a decision to exclude NBC from subsequent debates. I think that was the appropriate decision. There has to be consequence when the debate process is abused in the way that CNBC did it. This is a debate series for Republican primary voters, and when you don't have a single conservative moderator, when the moderation earns boos from the audience, I mean, I've never seen that before, where an audience booed the moderation, and I hope it was a signal, quite honestly, to the liberal media that they need to be more deliberate, more balanced, and more respectful
on your own
Republican
debate performance
primary voters and their candidates.
Let's talk about your own debate performance. Do you go back and do you look at the tapes, and did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish in that debate?
Well, actually, I don't go back and look at tapes, and yes, I accomplished what I wanted to. You know, I remain the most unknown, or the least well-known is a better way of saying it, candidate on the field. In the August 6th debate, I wasn't even on the stage. In the September debate, I had to fight my way onto the stage. And in the October debate, I was right in the middle of the stage. And so part of my objective in those debates is to introduce myself to the American people who don't yet know me, to tell them a little bit about who I am and what I've done, and also, most importantly, to talk about why I think we need a different kind of leadership now. Because the truth is, so much of what ails this nation have been festering problems that have existed under Republican as well as Democrat presidents.
Mrs. Fiorina, I want to talk about one thing you said in the debate that's come under a good degree of criticism, something fact checkers say was cherry-picked and misleading. You said that 92% of the jobs lost during Barack Obama's first term belonged to women. The fact-checkers say a big problem with the 2012 with the claim is that it was cherry-picked, the starting date for assessing it, and in fact that according to these government data, more women actually were working at the end of Obama's first term compared with the day he first took office.
Well, in this particular case, the fact checkers are correct. The 92%, it turns out, was the first 3.5 years of Barack Obama's term, and in the final 6 months of his term, things improved. But this is what the liberal media always does. It attacks the messenger, trying to avoid the message. Here is the message. It is factually true that women have been hit very hard by progressive policies. It is factually true that the number of women living in extreme poverty is at the highest rate in recorded history. It is factually true that 16.1% of women live below the poverty line, the highest level in 20 years. It is factually true that 3 million women have fallen into poverty.
Mrs. Fiorina, one of the things you just said that there was improvement.
Have been bad for women.
Mrs. Fiorina, you just said there was some improvement. You acknowledged there was some improvement, but you didn't say that during the debate, did you?
Martha, I've just acknowledged that I misspoke on that particular fact, that 3.5 years, 92% represented the progress in 3.5 years, and that in the last 6 months of Barack Obama's first term, things got better for women. You have not acknowledged the facts that I just laid out. 3 million women are living in poverty. The number of women living in extreme poverty is the highest on record. 16.1% of women live in poverty, the highest level in 20 years.
We'll let you speak for yourself with
cherry-pick their own facts.
I didn't launch into any facts, Mrs. Fiorina. I want to very quickly, please, very quickly talk about just quickly Syria and the president's plan to send 50 special operations forces in there. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do, but I think it's a bit too little too late. Look, all of us who know anything about it have known that you cannot have a successful bombing campaign unless you have special operations troops on the ground helping to direct that campaign. President Obama hasn't been willing to do that for political purposes. It's also true that he has no strategy in Syria. He has no strategy for ISIS. And it's also true that when the United States of America fails to act as he has failed to act, our options are diminished.
Okay, Mrs. Fiorina, I'm going to have to stop you there. We're going to get together again, I'm sure, and talk about your strategy in Syria. We really appreciate you being with us today. We're back with
one of the Republican candidates that everybody's talking about right now. He's neck and neck with Donald Trump, and we have a lot to talk about today. So please, let's welcome author of the new book, A More Perfect Union, presidential candidate, Dr. Ben Carson. You have such a calm, measured way of speaking. It's really quite different from everybody else who's so bombastic. I just have to ask before we do anything else, do you ever yell?
No.
No?
I used to.
Yep.
I used to be very hot-tempered, got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, we read the book.
You wrote about it.
And you read the Bible and came out a changed man from the bathroom. That was a very interesting story.
Well, I came to the understanding that to lash out at people, to try to punch somebody in the face was not a sign of strength, it was a sign of weakness.
Even when they get your Starbucks order wrong? Because, sometimes I get very curious.
Well, let's get into it, because, you've been making a couple of controversial comments over the last couple of days. The Hitler, Nazi Germany could happen here.
That's not what I said.
Okay, well, I'm just giving you...
That's the spin.
Okay,
that's the spin.
Well, then I'm going to give you an opportunity to say what you said and explain what you meant. But I want to give you the other two.
Okay.
Would not support a Muslim president if his religion is inconsistent with the Constitution.
Yeah.
And then it's okay to have a Confederate flag on private property.
Okay.
That one's right.
I don't have any problems. I can explain all of those quite easily.
So I'm asking.
That's the reason that I wrote that book, by the way.
Right.
It's about our laws and what is correct in this country. And this is a pluralistic society.
Right.
So that means no my way or the highway stuff. It means we have to learn how to get along together. And there's give and take with that. Now, what I was saying about the Hitler comment,
right.
And I purposely said that because I knew the left wing would go crazy. He said Hitler!
I don't think that's what happened.
Yes,
but why not just explain what you said so we understand?
So what I said is most of the people in Nazi Germany did not believe in what Hitler was doing. But did they speak up? No. They kept their mouths shut. And when you do that, you are compromising your freedom and the freedom of people who come behind you. You have to be willing to stand up for what you believe in.
He won the election in Germany. He won the election.
It doesn't matter what he did. We know he was an evil man.
But also, there were people standing up, just so the White Rose Society. There were a lot of folks that were
enough.
They might not have been enough, but there were people.
But that was the point.
That was your point.
I want people in America to be willing to stand up for what they believe in.
Okay, let me ask.
we do on this show especially.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're a neurosurgeon, which, you know, I'm very impressed with that. You separated Siamese twins, right? Fabulous. But I know also you're a scientist, and yet I was reading that you don't believe in evolution. Okay, now wait, before you go any further, what I want to say to you is, don't take this wrong, Mrs. Carson, I'm not asking for a date. But how do you feel about taking a trip to the Museum of Natural History with me? We could do like a little walkthrough and have a discussion about it.
Believe me, I would be happy to do that. I can have a very in-depth discussion with you. I've had discussions with Nobel laureates on this, and they have to admit that, well, we don't know everything. You know, the fact of the matter...
What do you make of that fact that they just dug up some bones 100 million years ago?
Let me explain. First of all, evolution, microevolution versus macroevolution are two different things.
Oh, this is too in the weeds for us right now. We don't have the time for this conversation. Let's just go on the date.
We're talking about natural selection when we're talking about microevolution. And I believe, yes, organisms have an ability to adapt to their environment, and they have the ability to change.
Right.
Now, the evolutionists say that is proof positive of evolution. I say it's proof positive of an intelligent creature who gave his creatures the ability to adapt to their environment so that they don't have to start over every 50 years.
But that's your faith. You believe that because that's your faith, right?
And I have said...
Why not believe in both?
Do you believe in both? Can you believe in both?
And I have said, you know, people are allowed to believe in what they believe. Some people believe that something came from nothing, and then they believe that it exploded, and we had a perfectly organized org. I don't believe that. I don't have enough faith to believe that, but I don't denigrate people who believe that.
No.
So people need to respect where you're coming from. I want to ask you, right after that tragic shooting in Oregon last week, you said gun control is not the answer. And I know you're a big advocate for mental health, but this morning you said that you'd be very comfortable if kindergarten teachers had guns in the classroom. Why do you think that's a good idea?
Not all kindergarten teachers. I said people who are trained and understand all the implications. And you obviously are not just going to have a weapon sitting on the kindergarten teacher's desk. And I know
Where would the weapon be?
It would be secured in a place where kids could not get to it.
So if a gunman comes in, if a gunman comes in with an AK-45 or an AR-15, how fast can that teacher go to the locked drawer and get that gun?
Well, I want that teacher trained.
You want that teacher trained?
I want that teacher trained in diversionary tactics and whatever needs to be done in order to get there. And I want there to be other people in that school who also know how to get to that.
Why do we want to live like this? I was a school teacher. I don't want to live like that.
We don't want to live that way.
No.
Michelle, do you want to go?
I do have a quick question, because, you know, you were asked recently about what you would do with Hurricane Joaquin, and, you know, you said you didn't know, and actually the look on your press secretary's face was... Hilarious and priceless, and we love her. But do you have an... we have it right here. That's, like, my favorite reaction, maybe of all time. But do you have an answer now?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I hope you saw the press conference. We were talking about something completely different. We were on the way out to the bus, and someone brings up a new subject. I said, I don't know. I'm getting out of here.
But to prepare for a hurricane, I mean, I grew up in Miami, so I'm like, you know, even we have some things in place when a hurricane comes.
Clearly, we have a whole series of things in places for hurricanes. And quite frankly, if you're at the point where the president has to enact the things, you have not done your homework. That should be already in place and ready to go.
Mr. Carson, I have a question for you, and I want to also talk about your book, but my first quick thing is, the one thing I do like about you is your tax idea. Everyone should pay the same tax, flat tax, and get rid of the IRA. High five. Cool beans for you. But I want to hear about your book, the IRS. What did I say?
She said IRA. I was wondering about that.
Sorry.
I knew what you meant.
I know. Well, we all mess up sometimes, right? So please talk about your book, The New Perfect Union, for us, please.
Well, everybody knows that we have a Constitution, but not many people know what's in it. And it's very important because the founders of this nation said that our freedoms and our system is based upon a well-informed and educated populace. And if you don't have that, then it becomes very easy to fool people. For instance, let me give you a perfect example. If you're not well educated, someone could come along and say, you know what, the economy is great, unemployment is down to 5.1%, which is essentially full employment, we're in great shape. But if you're well educated and informed, you know that you can make that number anything you want based on who you include and exclude, and that the labor force participation rate, which is the number of people eligible to work who are actually working, is at a 37-year low. And we know we have problems and we need to fix them. And these are not Democrat or Republican problems. These are problems that affect our whole society. And we have to stop making everything into a Democrat or Republican.
Yes, I agree with that.
Ben, I know your wife's in the audience right now. You've been married to your beautiful wife, Candy, for 40 years. She said she did not want you to run for president until she became a grandmother. You are now a grandmother of 2. Why did you not want him to run for president until you became a grandma?
You know, we've been married 40 years.
Yay.
And we celebrated in New Hampshire, 600 of our closest friends. But getting back to the 2 granddaughters, one of them was born on leap day in 2012, so, you know, she didn't even have a birthday this year, but she had her party. The other one's going to turn 2 next month. And when you look in those little faces and you think about the debt that our country has, we're at $18.5 trillion, which to pay it off, if you were to pay it off at a rate of $10 million every day, 365 days a year, 365 days a year, it would take you 5,000 years. That's how bad it is. We're the first generation to make it worse for the next generation. When I look at these little faces, I say, we can't do that to them. When I see other people's babies, because I don't see my own, because we're not home, but when I see these other little, you know, it just makes me more determined that whatever I can do, I'm going to do.
Are you going to put her in your cabinet, Dr. Carson?
Okay, well, we're going to talk more when we come right back. Dr. Ben Carson. He's really one of the leaders in the polls. And one of the other quotes that we've sort of gotten from the research is that you sort of feel that there's not actually a war on women, but there may be a war on what's inside of women. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the babies. I mean, killing babies all over the place. And, you know, we should be... I think people can probably understand. In my case, I spent my entire career trying to preserve life and give people quality of life, even operating on babies in the womb, operating all night long sometimes on premature babies. And I get to meet those people, you know, when they're adults and productive adults. There is no way you can convince me that they're not important, that they're just a mass of cells and that you can do anything to them.
I want to ask you this. Have you met with the women who have to make these horrendous decisions when they have to make them of whether or not they can bring a child into the world? I mean, we talk about bringing children into the world all the time, but periodically, some women feel, I just can't. And are you empathetic to them? Because we just had
empathetic.
Oh, good. Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
Very empathetic. And what I have said is that this is a job for us in the private sector. What we need to do is make sure that we provide adequate daycare centers for these mothers so that they can get their GED, their associate's degree, their bachelor's degree, their master's degree.
You're assuming that these are mothers who aren't educated. I mean, I'm talking about women who make
most
that.
Of them.
I don't know that you can.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you a fact. Let me tell you a fact. The fact is, a lot of those young girls who are having babies out of wedlock, when they have that first baby, they stop their education. And that child is 4 times as likely to grow up in poverty. We as a society have an obligation to do what's necessary to stop that cycle from occurring.
So how important is birth control, then, to the Republican Party? They should be out there regularly applauding Planned Parenthood for supplying birth control, mammograms, and everything else. Why are they against Planned Parenthood? Are you against birth control, too?
I don't speak for the Republican Party. I speak for me.
Okay, for yourself. Are you against birth control also?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. And so I guess you believe in daycare centers and maternity leave and food stamps and all the things that go along with raising a kid if you don't have the money.
Here's what I believe in, because I get sick and tired of people, particularly progressives, saying Carson grew up poor, he must have benefited from government programs, and now he wants to withdraw all the programs from poor people.
We do not assume
Wait a minute. I've heard that so many times. You've heard it too. It's a bunch of crap. And what I really actually want to do is provide people with a mechanism for coming out of a state of dependency and climbing the ladder and becoming part of the fabric of America.
This is a great thing.
We agree with that.
Yes, but I think my question. Actually, I'm going to let everybody else ask their questions.
Well, it takes me to Obamacare, because you said it's the worst thing that has happened in this nation since slavery. How is it slavery and over 9 million people have it?
Let me tell you why.
Why?
Because this is supposed to be a country that is of, for, and by the people. The government is supposed to be there to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With this particular act, the government comes along and says, don't care what you people think. This is what we're doing. We're cramming it down your throat, and if you don't like it, too bad.
Getting into the war.
That essentially shifts...
Because we did that. We've done that. That seems to be the way of the nation.
But it shifts the relationship between the people and the government. The people are supposed to be at the pinnacle. The government works for us. It's not the other way around. And we need to restore that.
Okay.
That's very important.
All right. Are we done?
Anybody else?
I just wanted to ask one last thing. I mean, you said that you don't necessarily relate to the Republicans, and you don't really say you're a Democrat either. So why do you feel this way?
I said I don't speak for the Republicans. I didn't say I didn't relate to them.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing.
Is there anything about the Republicans that you don't relate to?
Well, I am not a highly partisan person. The issues that affect us, imminent financial collapse if we don't change our ways.
Forgive me, Dr. Ben.
Forgive me. They're not Republican or Democrat issues.
Dr. Ben Carson, y'all. Members, wait. Members of the audience, you're all going home with Dr. Ben's book, A More Perfect Union. Thank you, Dr. Ben.
Mr. Trump, yes. You've done very well in this campaign so far by promising to build a wall and make another country pay for it. Right. Send 11 million people out of the country. Cut taxes $10 trillion without increasing the deficit. Right. And make Americans better off because your greatness would replace the stupidity and incompetence of others. That's right. Let's be honest. Is this a comic book version of a presidential campaign?
It's not a comic book, and it's not a very nicely asked question the way you say that. Larry Kudlow, as an example, who I have a lot of respect for, loves my tax plan. We're reducing taxes to 15%. We're bringing corporate taxes down, bringing money back in, corporate inversions. We have $2.5 trillion outside of the United States, which we want to bring back in. As far as the wall is concerned, we're going to build a wall. We're going to create a border. We're going to let people in, but they're going to come in legally. They're going to come in legally. And it's something that can be done, and I get questioned about that. They built the Great Wall of China. That's 13,000 miles. Here we actually need 1,000 because we have natural barriers. So we need 1,000. We can do a wall. We're going to have a big, fat, beautiful door right in the middle of the wall. We're going to have people come in, but they're coming in legally. And Mexico's going to pay for the wall because Mexico, I love the Mexican people. I respect the Mexican leaders, but the leaders are much sharper, smarter, and more cunning than our leaders. And just to finish, people say, oh, how are you going to get Mexico to pay? A politician, other than the people on this stage, I don't want to insult, a politician cannot get them to pay. I can. We lose. We have a trade imbalance.
But
with
Mr.
Mexico,
Trump, hold on a second.
John, of $50 billion.
We're at 60 seconds. We're at 60
Believe me,
seconds.
the wall is peanuts by comparison.
We're at 60 seconds, but I got to ask you, you talked about your tax plan. You say that it would not increase the deficit because you'd cut taxes $10 trillion and the economy would take off like, hold on. The economy would take off like a rocket ship. Right, dynamic. I talked to economic advisors who have served presidents of both parties. They said that you have as much chance of cutting taxes that much without increasing the deficit as you would of flying away from that podium by flapping your arms really high.
Then you have to get rid of Larry Kudlow, who sits on your panel, who's a great guy, who came out the other day and said, I love Trump's tax plan.
John, thank you, Mr. John. The Tax Foundation says, looked at all of our plans, and his creates, even with the dynamic effect, $8 trillion deficit.
Gentlemen, we'll get back to this. Just a minute. No, just a minute. We're going to continue with this. I want to talk taxes.
Hold on, Gunnar. We're coming back to you in a minute. Becky's moving on.
Dr. Carson, let's talk about taxes. You have a flat tax plan of 10%.
to have a 10% tithe, and that's how we're going to fund the government, and we're going to just fix everything with waste, fraud, and abuse, or that we're just going to be great, or we're going to ship 10 million Americans or 10 million people out of this country, leaving their children here in this country and dividing families. Folks, we got to wake up. We cannot elect somebody that doesn't know how to do the job. You got to pick somebody who has experience, somebody that has the know-how, the discipline, and I spent my entire lifetime balancing federal budgets, growing jobs, the same in Ohio, and I will go back to Washington with my plan, and I will present it within 100 days, and it will pass, and it will be strong again.
Mr. Trump, 30 seconds. First of all, John got lucky with a thing called fracking, okay? He hit oil. He got lucky with fracking. Believe me, that's why Ohio is doing well. And that's important for you to know. Number two, this is the man that was a managing general partner at Lehman Brothers when it went down the tubes and almost took every one of us with us, including Ben and myself, because I was there and I watched what happened, and Lehman Brothers started it all. He was on the board, and he was a managing general partner. Okay. And just thirdly, he was so nice. He was such a nice guy. And he said, oh, I'm never going to attack. But then his poll numbers tanked. That's why he's on the end. And he got nasty. And he got nasty. So you know what? You can have him.
Okay, let me respond. First of all, Ohio does have an energy industry, but we're diversified. We're one of the fastest growing states in the country. We came back from the dead. And you know what? It works very, very well. And secondly, when you talk about me being on the board of Lehman Brothers, I wasn't on the board of Lehman Brothers. I was a banker, and I was proud of it, and I traveled the country and learned how people make jobs. We ought to have politicians who not only have government experience, but know how the CEOs and the job creators work. My state is doing great across the board, and guess what? In 2011, I got a deal in agreement with the board that he tried to take credit for 4 years later. It's a joke.
Thank you, Governor.
Becky, if you'd like a 10%. Let me give 30 seconds to Dr. Carson.
Since I was attacked, too.
Thank you.
Let me just say, if you're talking about an $18 trillion economy, you're talking about a 15% tax on your gross domestic product, you're talking about $2.7 trillion. We have a budget closer to $3.5 trillion. But if you also apply that same 15% to several other things, including corporate taxes and including the capital gains taxes, you make that amount up pretty quickly. So that's not by any stretch pie in the sky.
Becky, if you want all of this. You said that you did great with Atlantic City, and you did. But some of the individuals, the bondholders, some of the contractors who work for you didn't fare so well. Bankruptcy is a broken promise. Why should the voters believe the promises that you're telling them right now?
Well, first of all, like many other very big businessmen, I could name them here, but I'm not going to do that for a lot of obvious reasons. But the biggest, and almost all of them, they've all used the chapter laws, the bankruptcy laws, to their own benefit. Before this, I was a very successful person as a developer and as a businessman. Atlantic City has gone bad. I mean, Chris will know about that. I'm not blaming Chris, by the way, but he will know about that. Caesars, the Rolls-Royce, as you know, is in bankruptcy. Almost every hotel in Atlantic City has either been in bankruptcy or will be in bankruptcy, the biggest. But also the biggest people. Now, I've used that to my advantage as a businessman, from my family, from myself. I never filed for bankruptcy, but many, many people did. What happened with Atlantic City is very, very disgraceful. Now, hundreds of companies I've opened. I've used it 3 times, maybe 4 times. Came out great, but I guess I'm supposed to come out great. That's what I could do for the country. We owe $19 trillion. Boy, am I good at solving debt problems. Nobody can solve it like me. But I will tell you this, Atlantic City, you're using that. Hundreds of companies that I've opened have thrived. I built a net worth of way over $10 billion, and I've done it 4 times out of hundreds. And I'm glad I did it. I used the laws of the country to my benefit. I'm sorry.
Mr. Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Carson, in recent weeks, a number...
Very simple. We're going to make a really dynamic economy from what we have right now, which is not at all dynamic. We're going to bring jobs back from Japan. We're going to bring jobs back from China. We're going to bring, frankly, jobs back from Mexico, where, as you probably saw, Nabisco is leaving Chicago with one of their biggest plants, and they're moving it to Mexico. We're going to bring jobs and manufacturing back. We're going to cut costs. We're going to save Social Security, and we're going to save Medicare.
Governor, you just heard him.
You have to reform Social Security, and the simple way to do it is to make sure that the wealthiest don't receive the same benefits as people that are lower income, and make sure that you enhance savings in the private market. The idea of 401ks. I have a small business that I set up. It took an arm and a leg to be able to set up a 401k. Because of all the federal mandates and federal laws, it was too expensive. We need to incent private savings and make sure that Social Security is protected for those that have it. But the idea that you can't, they're just going to grow your way out of this. I have a plan to grow the economy at 4%, but you're going to have to make adjustments for both Medicare and Social Security.
Governor Kasich, you want 30 seconds? In my state, we took Medicaid, the hardest program.
Our country doesn't win anymore. We used to win. We don't win anymore. We lose on trade. We lose with ISIS. We lose with one of the worst deals I've ever seen negotiated of any kind. That's our recent catastrophe with Iran. We don't win. Let me give you one quick example. These folks, CNBC, they had it down at 3.5 hours. I just read today in the New York Times, $250,000 for a 30-second ad. I went out and said, it's ridiculous. I could stand up here all night. Nobody wants to watch 3.5 or 3 hours. It was a big sacrifice, and I have to hand it to Ben. We called Ben. He was with me 100%. We called in. We said, that's it. We're not doing it. They lost a lot of money. Everybody said it couldn't be done. Everybody said it was going to be 3 hours, 3.5, including them. And in about 2 minutes, I renegotiated it down to 2 hours so we can get the hell out of here. Not bad. Not bad. And I'll do that with the country. We will make America great again. And thank you, everybody.
You have been very critical of Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, who has wanted to increase the number of these H-1B.
I was not at all critical of him. I was not at all. In fact, frankly, he's complaining about the fact that we're losing some of the most talented people. They go to Harvard, they go to Yale, they go to Princeton. They come from another country, and they're immediately sent out. I am all in favor of keeping these talented people here so they can go to work in Silicon Valley.
So you're in favor of increasing
that? I have not been at all critical of him.
Where did I read this and come up with this that you were...
Probably, I don't know. You people write this stuff. I don't know where you...
I don't write this stuff. Let's just be clear. Let's talk again.
And if I could say just one thing. Yeah. I am the only person in either campaign that's self-funding. I'm putting up 100% of my own money. And right now, I will be putting up a tremendous... So far, I put up less than anybody, and I have the best results. Wouldn't that be nice if the country could do that? But I will be putting up, tremendous amounts of money. Super PACs are a disaster. They're a scam. They cause dishonesty. And you better get rid of them, because they are causing a lot of bad decisions to be made by some very good people. And I'm not blaming these folks, but I guess I could. Very good people are making very bad decisions right now. And if anything comes out of this whole thing with some of these nasty and ridiculous questions, I will tell you, you better get rid of the super PACs, because they're causing a big problem with this country. Not only in dishonesty and what's going on, but also in a lot of bad decisions that are being made for the benefit of lobbyists and special interests.
Becky. You know, Mr. Trump, if I may just say,
just a minute, Mrs. Fiorina, let me follow up on this for just a moment. You had talked a little bit about Marco Rubio. I think you called him Mark Zuckerberg's personal senator because he was in favor of the H-1B.
I never said that. I never said that.
So this was an erroneous article the whole way around?
He's got another gentleman in Florida who happens to be a very nice guy, but not...
My apologies. I'm sorry.
Somebody's really doing some bad facts.
Since I've been mentioned, can I respond?
Yes, you may.
Okay. You know, the Democrats have the ultimate super PAC. It's called the mainstream media. Who every single day, and I'll tell you why. Last week, Hillary Clinton went before a committee. She admitted she had sent emails to her family saying, hey...
And it says that, again, Mark Zuckerberg's personal senator, Marco Rubio, has a bill to triple H-1Bs that would decimate women and minorities. Are you in favor of H-1Bs? Are you opposed to them?
I'm in favor of people coming into this country legally. And you know what? They can have it any way you want. You can call it visas. You can call it work permits. You can call it anything you want. I've created tens of thousands of jobs. And in all due respect, and actually some of these folks I really like a lot, but I'm the only one that can say that. I have created tens of thousands of jobs. And I'll be creating many millions of jobs if I'm given the opportunity to be president. As far as Mark is concerned, as far as the visas are concerned, if we need people, it's fine. They have to come into this country legally. We have a country of borders. We have a country of laws. We have to obey the laws. It's fine if they come in, but they have to come in legally.
Thank you, sir.
That was mentioned in your question.
You get 30 seconds. Yeah.
Well, I've learned the rules on that. Look, in addition to what Donald is saying, we also need to talk about the legal immigration system for permanent residents.
You said you have a special permit to carry a gun in New York.
Yes.
After the Oregon mass shooting on October 1st, you said, by the way, it was a gun-free zone. If you had a couple of teachers with guns, you would have been a hell of a lot better off.
Or somebody else. Right.
Would you feel more comfortable if your employees brought guns to work?
Yes, I might feel more comfortable. I would say that I would, and I have a permit, which is very unusual in New York, a permit to carry, and I do carry on occasion, sometimes a lot, but I like to be unpredictable so that people don't know exactly what to carry. Unlike this country, by the way, unlike our country where we're totally predictable, and the enemy, whether it's ISIS or anybody else, they know exactly what we're doing because we have the wrong leadership. But I feel that the gun-free zones, and, you know, when you say that, that's target practice for the sickos and for the mentally ill. That's target. They look around for gun-free zones. I mean, we could give you another example. The Marines, the Army, these wonderful 6 soldiers that were killed. 2 of them were among the most highly decorated. They weren't allowed on a military base to have guns, and somebody walked in and shot them, killed them. If they had guns, he wouldn't be around very long. I can tell you there wouldn't have been much damage. So I think gun-free zones are a catastrophe. They're a feeding frenzy for sick people.
We called a few Trump resorts, few Trump properties that do not allow guns with or without a permit. Would you change those policies?
I would change it.
Okay.
Sure. I would change it.
All right. Thank you.